God, no, this is it. This is the apocalypse. Hide your kids, hide your wife, hide your soul. Roll up into a ball and pray that this is some sort of bad dream. Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, today we're going to talk about a very cool recent development. You know Ark Survival Evolved, the survival game? It's been going for a few years now and it's pretty popular. And of course, there is a decent bit of overlap between that game and the Monster Hunter community as far as players, as it is a game based around dinosaurs, and well, we all sort of like dinosaurs here. Normally that game is about surviving in a harsh world, building massive sprawling bases, taming dinosaurs both to use in battle and just as part of your living arrangements too, or even just to have some friends. But there is a mod team that created a ridiculous sort of overhaul for Ark that just replaces a ton of dinosaurs within the game with, well, Monster Hunter monsters, as you've been seeing for yourself. It's crazy, it's genuinely very cool, and undeniably the effects on their attacks have maybe been laid on a little bit thick. I mean, I've never seen an air gigante cause an earthquake in game, but hey, you could argue that some of these effects, at least to this degree, are a bit more lore accurate to Monster Hunter anyways, even if it doesn't match the normal gameplay of the series. Anyways, there are a couple of things to talk about here in particular. This mod isn't public, so sadly we cannot actually play it ourselves, but we do get to look at it and think about a few things. First up, it's just really freaking cool. Like, looking at this massive world, various biomes, some turf war type fights between different species, some just living in harmony with each other. It's really neat. I love just seeing something like this. But then there is the big second topic. Would this be fun to do? Not even just as a mod for Ark or something like that, because obviously this is sort of crazy, but in a good way. But I'm talking about what if Capcom themselves made a Monster Hunter spin-off that was just a survival game in a massive open world, where the creatures roaming around were Monster Hunter monsters. I think having Elder Dragons like this mod does would probably be a bit difficult, first of all, as realistically the way that I see the concept of a Monster Hunter survival game is that you aren't playing as like a hunter power level character, you're like a villager from one of the random villages around the map who got stranded and is just trying their best to survive. In the early stages, a Velociprey would probably threaten your life entirely, you know what I mean? Maybe you could have a rare Elder Dragon around the place for when players had managed to really push through the systems of the game to reach maximum power, but this would be a game much more focused on the little guys, really. And I know, some of you are saying I'm crazy, Capcom would never make a survival game spin-off of Monster Hunter, that's ridiculous, and it just couldn't exist. But 10 years ago, if I'd said the same thing about a sort of Pokemon-like game where you make friends with the monsters and then make them fight against other monsters, you would have said the same thing, wouldn't you? And then in 2016, we got Monster Hunter Stories, a game that was exactly that, Monster Hunter in a sort of Pokemon style, and this game was absolutely beloved. Then as a result of that, we got Monster Hunter Stories 2, which was even more beloved and genuinely popular, even creating a number of new Monster Hunter fans who had never even played the main series games before, and I think that is awesome. So that said, I think there is very little that is actually off the table when it comes to potential spin-offs from Monster Hunter, and so again, why not a survival game like this? Why not a game where you have to gather wood and rocks to craft a spear just to have a chance of survival against the smallest of monsters? One where you could potentially tame them like you can in Ark, build up your own sort of base, which would be like a village for yourself, interact with other players. It could be a ton of fun, and it would definitely be a particularly unique thing as well. I just have these visions of like an Anjanath standing outside of your little hut that you've built, firing flamethrowers at it, trying to blow it down like a big bad wolf while you sit inside huddled around a tiny fire, trying to make as little noise as possible in the hopes that it'll just give up and walk away. It would be Monster Hunter in a whole new light, because a big thing about this series that hunters often forget is that it's actually incredibly terrifying to be in this world. If we weren't hunters, if we weren't playing as characters that can wield 8-foot-long greatswords just because we can, and then do flips while holding them, then these creatures are genuinely scary. And I think a game that really puts that into perspective could be really good for the series as a whole. Sure, I would be interested in the game itself, but I think it would just be interesting to see the larger effect that it would have on the community, the ripple effect of making people actually respect and understand how dangerous even something like a Congo Lala actually is. Yes, it's a silly creature. Yes, it's very derpy, and yes, it just eats mushrooms and actually genuinely farts on you, but it also has piercing red eyes in the night and terrifyingly long and sharp claws. A survival game would be like knowing how it would feel to face to a monster in real life as just a basic human. None of us would stand a chance, not a single one, except maybe that guy who played the Mountain in the Game of Thrones, but even then, against anything bigger than a raptor, I don't really see him coming out on the other side in very good shape. That said, I think just the general idea of this is super cool. Of course, seeing it in Ark is a great representation, almost like a tech demo for what could be, and so this mod is really cool to see. I have said that a couple of times already, but even just seeing this footage of these attacks in a totally unusual environment is pretty awesome to me. They've really amped up like all of the effects to the point of actually fighting them seems impossible to me in any reasonable way, but goddamn does it look cool. Just the idea of looking up to the sky and seeing a group of Rathalos flying over you is insane. Yes, a lot of the lore for most of these monsters paints them as more solitary creatures. They don't normally tend to hang out in groups of their own species, but that only makes sense because of the way the main series games are. With a maximum of 3 large monsters per map at a time, there just isn't enough food for 5 Rathalos to be living in one corner of that altogether, as an example. What if the survival game instead was based on some sort of forgotten continent, or at least a reasonably large island? One absolutely flush with flora and fauna as far as the eye could see, and these large monsters are able to exist here in a totally unique way from the rest of the universe just because there is enough sustenance for them to be using here. There's no need for them to separate, there's no need for them to actually split up and leave, just because they can survive here and so they will thrive. Yes, they'll still fight with each other over territory because that's just sort of how wild animals are, even when they are big enough to be called monsters, but there's just something really interesting about this as a concept to me. I'm not even all that big personally into survival games, but I can't help but feel like I would absolutely get absorbed into a Monster Hunter themed one. One where I know all the creatures already by heart, one where you could probably potentially tame them, or even if you couldn't, even just if it was literally carnivores are out to eat you and you have to be careful either fighting them or running from them more than likely, herbivores are sort of chill. I would love that. Imagine being in this big terrible world of a survival game like this where you have no power at all and you just wander up and you find this field of Aptonoth just grazing and eating some grass, just chilling. You walk up just to experience what it would be like to hang out with them, and because you literally aren't a threat in any way, they just let you stay around without running away. Then, all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, a Rathalos swoops down and grabs an Aptonoth out of the herd in an instant, pays no mind to you or any of the other Aptonoth, it's just gone. One of them just lifted into the sky, never to be seen again. Then a few moments later, it happens again, and you realize the Rathalos are hunting in a group. It's not just one. This will keep happening for a bit. The terror sets in as you come to terms with the fact that you could be considered just as good a meal as an Aptonoth. Do you run, making yourself a more obvious target, or do you just try and hide and let it blow over as all the Aptonoth get picked off one by one? This is the type of thing that I envision in a potential Monster Hunter survival game. Maybe it wouldn't happen, maybe it's too off base for them to actually consider, but I think not only would the game be really cool to actually see, just like this Ark mod is really cool to look at, but I imagine that it would do quite well too. Survival games are really popular these days, and Monster Hunter fans are super loyal, so if you made a Monster Hunter survival game, I struggle to imagine it not being a pretty decent hit, at least as far as a spin-off goes. All of this to say, of course, that this Ark Monster Hunter mod is absolutely awesome. It is not public at the moment to my knowledge at all, but it is really cool to actually get to see, and even if the effects have been made a little bit over the top, it is still undeniably Monster Hunter. It's seeing lots of big, powerful monsters, some of them in packs just living together, which is awesome to see because you never do in the actual games, some of them fighting each other that never would in the actual games. It's just cool. There's no better word to describe it, honestly. I hope you've all enjoyed this discussion, what it was based off of and where it led. Honestly, it was just a little bit of a fun chat that I wanted to have after seeing that this mod existed in the first place. Let us know what you think about the possibility of a Monster Hunter survival game spin-off, or even any other interesting spin-off ideas in the comments down below. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.